Hi everybody and welcome back to Enjoy English with Mrs. A. As you all know, I'm an ESL teacher and I teach English in Spain. I've been doing it for 13 years and I'm the author of English textbooks as well. Now, fans of the Big Bang Theory, as well as my own students, have been asking way more preposition questions ever since Dr. Sheldon Cooper declared war on ending a sentence with a preposition, also known as preposition stranding. I'm a big fan of the show, but I'm also a teacher, and today I'm here to shed some light on the matter. Spoiler alert, it's a big, fat myth. Let's start with the language. Language is like a living organism, constantly evolving to embrace new terminology, tweak terminology in use, and even previously existing terminology that took a different turn and changed meaning. Yeah, this is happening as well. The English language is not as rigid as other languages out there, since let's be fair, we bend those grammar rules to include exceptions way more than other languages do. See Spanish. Like most language snobs out there, what Dr. Sheldon Cooper likes is formal, written, and verbal expression. In short, formal English. But hey, what we call formal English today is going to be a bit different in 50 or 100 years, especially since, like we said before, language is constantly evolving. Now, I have a whole other video detailing how to write a formal letter or email, but for now, let's see what we know about formal expression, written or verbal. Phrasal verbs are not encouraged. And what is a phrasal verb, you ask? Well, it's the ordinary verb that meets the preposition or adverb that will give new meaning to its ordinary life. You like that, huh? Sadly, the verb is not known for its loyalty to the preposition. So this happens. When on its own, the verb get means to achieve. But when you pair it with a preposition, well, depending on the preposition, it might mean something else entirely. So technically, we knew all this from day one. The preposition is the pariah of formal expression, written or verbal. Now let's check out some examples. Who should I give this back to? Well, if you want to avoid ending this question with a preposition, you would say, to whom should I give this back? Naturally, if you're writing a book and you want your character to scream academia, of course you'll have them speak like this. If you're not a native speaker and you're expressing yourself this way, not a problem. Now, if one of my friends starts expressing themselves like, to whom should I give this back? I might start laughing because that's so unnatural to hear among my peers. I don't think I've heard many people expressing themselves this way. In all honesty, another example. This is something I've never thought about. Thought about is obviously a collocation, and in this case, a phrasal verb. So how do you break this down? Well, this is something about which I have never thought. It sounds pedantic. I wanted to avoid the word, but there you have it. Now, the way you would turn this around, keep it formal, and keep you from sounding very stuck up would be, this is something I have never considered. And all this is a bit like the story of wanna, gonna, gotta, have to. All very common in verbal expression, but uncommon in writing. If you look at a sentence and that particular collocation or phrasal verb has a verbal equivalent, well, that's what you're going to use, especially in academic writing. Instead of ask for, it's likely you'll use request. Instead of point out, you'll use indicate. Instead of deal with, you will probably use manage. And because formal writing is rigid by definition, even commonly used simple verbs, not phrasal verbs, may have a formal equivalent. Instead of choose, you'll probably say select. Instead of give, maybe you'll say provide. Instead of see, maybe you'll say observe. So I'll say the problem is not with the use of prepositions per se, but with the fact that the excessive use of prepositions may fall a little too comfy under the informal umbrella. Yeah, but is it wrong? Personally, I'd stay away from the whole concept when writing an academic paper. Otherwise, it's a matter of natural expression. My students told me that we tend to use a lot of phrasal verbs when speaking, which is something I wasn't even aware of until they pointed it out. But it's true. See? I just did it. Now, another thing altogether is completely removing a verb from a sentence or a question, such as, where you at? And you wouldn't believe how common this is. Where you at? And the grammatically correct way to say this would be, where are you? Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! As we've seen, while ending a sentence with a preposition may be fine, completely eradicating the verb from that sentence or question is a big no-no, even if we do it for the sake of flow. I'd consider this a mistake even in informal writing, because at the end of the day, I am an ESL teacher, but I would not consider it a mistake if I read it in a novel, especially since linguistic idiosyncrasies actually help profiling a character and adding that extra layer of uniqueness through expression. But let's not beat around the bush. When the preposition is part of an expression, and you know the thing about expressions, they come as a block and cannot be divided, even the snobbiest of snobs cannot crinkle their nose in protest. It is what it is, whether you like it or not. And this is the most important part of today's video. Saying something like, you're too much to deal with, or that kind of courage is hard to come by. These are expressions. You cannot undo these expressions because what's going to happen then? So when you have these expressions, these collocations, it's completely okay and fine to end your sentences with a preposition, because that preposition is part of a whole block. What will you invest in? Invest goes within. Romeo and Juliet, they're together for life. What did you step on? Now imagine somebody asking, on what did you step? It's funny. I mean, I would love to hear somebody speaking like that. It would be a hoot for sure, but it does sound a bit unnatural and pedantic to my ears. All right, but do we sound awful when ending a sentence with a preposition? And let me tell you guys, only to grammar police and language snobs, who might describe these practices as inelegant. Otherwise, collocations and expressions are rule breakers by default. Many students have asked me, well, how do we know when we have to write a formal letter or email? And for official ESL examinations, the answer is pretty simple. If the recipient of your email is not a family member or a friend, bingo. Other formal writings include an academic paper, a research paper, a business proposal, a report, a cover letter. I mean, guys, if you can sing lyrics like "Love don't cost a thing" or "My mama don't like you and she likes everyone," and of course, oh, the double negative, "A little party never killed nobody," surely you can live with ending a sentence with a preposition in your day-to-day. And I must confess, I've had it up to here with the language shaming, and this needs to stop. I've read things like, American English is incorrect because it's not the original language. Where's this even coming from? Based on some of the comments I've been reading, does a Canadian not speak well because they weren't born in the UK? Are 27 million Australians butchering the language on a daily basis? What is this? Learn to regard a language as a living organism that is constantly evolving. After all, if you go 200 years back in time, I'm sure you'll sound weird as well. Embrace it. Until next week, bye!